We'll give it about another 30 seconds here for the people who have to log in late. I get it. You get it. Okay, without further ado, time is money, so let's get started. I am Stephen Grine. I am with Magos, and I am going to be your host today for episode 2 of our monthly webinar series. We're going to be having a lot of great things to talk about here. I've done a whole lot of research on data. I gathered data from a lot of different places. I'll talk about where those places are, and we'll go into what that data looks like. As we look at what that data is going to tell us, it's going to tell us where our true perimeter is. It's also going to tell us where we define what good looks like. Also, we'll figure out when nothing goes right, when the worst case scenario happens up, or gosh forbid, gets flubbed up beyond all recognition. We'll calculate the costs, pro and con, and we'll get into some really great stuff. It's going to be a little dry from the standpoint of data. Data is always dry, but I'll try to make it as entertaining as possible. But you'll come out here with some really interesting thoughts for what you're going to do the rest of the day and rest of the week. Speaking of sources, I've got sources from all over the place. Matter of fact, I tried to get them all on one page, and you really couldn't read them when their font was 3 or below. So I wanted to show you one of the pages. If you want to know the whole in totality of all the places I got data, please DM me and I'll go ahead and get that to you. Long story short, lots of active data from a lot of different places, from industry and trade, real world events, a lot of government background, a lot of investigative background. So I'm going to have, I'm going to go ahead and skip this last one. When I ask you, security practitioners, where the perimeter is, what do? You point the fence. It's obvious. That's your point of last resort there. That's where you put on the edge of your property. That's going to denote your property from someone else's property or not your property. And so that's where you really want to have your fence is right there at the cusp. But there's a lot of reasons why the fence should not be your perimeter. And the data bears that out. Let's give some data teasers here. 1 out of 4 rural facilities in critical infrastructure has real-time detection. That means 3 of them are not being monitored live. False alarm rates for traditional motion detection. 5 out of 100 are correct. Traditional motion detection is chock full of bad false alarms, negative alarms, nuisance alarms. And then you always have to have a whopper there. The NERC database logged 1,700 physical security incidents in 2022. And I looked, the numbers are not out yet for 23 and 24, but they will far exceed the 10% year over year growth in attacks. So attacks are only growing. Here's something I want you to think about. I had it originally set as a poll, but yeah, we're having a little bit of problem with polls. I want you to guess internally. What does the attack type breakout look like? Intrusions, where there's actually physically people walking onto your property. Standoff attacks, where someone is outside your property but doing damage nonetheless. And then those that are unclear. And unclear from the standpoint of the data was devices near the perimeter, drone drops, vandalism outside your facility, unknown if it was accessed or not. If you'd said B or C, you'd have been wrong. Intrusions account for a little over half of the actual attacks taken out by critical infrastructure. Standoff attacks, where people are outside the fence, a little less than half, and then the margin is the unclear. So if you're thinking about the fence being your perimeter, what is your goal? Do you want to stop the incursion Do you want to stop before damage is incurred? Do you want to stop before the actor exits your facility, or do you want to wait until they return home? Sorry about that. If you're looking to stop the incursion, you have 0 seconds to act. If you're looking to stop damage, I argue against the data where it says that once they enter your facility, they've done some sort of damage. But if you want to talk out what the data says, you have 2.5 minutes to stop them before they create real damage. And then they have 7 minutes to actually exit your facility. So you have 7 minutes to get there, respond, and mitigate that situation before they're gone and you have to worry about next time. So again, focusing on the fence, I looked at the data and put out 2 things. What does good look like? Where things went well and went right? And what happens when things don't go right? And so the bottom series from the black down is what good looks like. So you have great detection really fast. You have great classification and verification very fast. You have a great virtual response that happens immediately. And then your physical response happens not shortly after. And if you notice, not only do we do well from our response perspective, we also hindered the actors as much as we possibly can, because that gray line that represents their attack duration is almost as long as the top full escape, from start to finish with the escape window. And that's where you want to call it out, where it says when nothing goes right, detection doesn't happen correctly, verification, classification doesn't happen correctly, your virtual response is delayed, and your physical response is way delayed, so much so that the actor is probably sitting on their couch with a beer watching on the 6 o'clock news before you've shown up to respond. But what if I took that data, focusing on the fence, and did 4 different attack types? So I chose drone payload drop, offense, vandalism and sabotage, copper theft, again, very popular, and sniper attack. And I use sniper attack because, oddly enough, according to what the sources put out, it is the most costly event to happen to our critical infrastructure, and it happens most frequently. So while we don't hear about these things, they happen every 10 to 15 minutes in the United States, and they cost more damage than all the other attacks combined. But if you notice something here, look at where those physical response triggered windows are, and look at where the attack window is. The only chance you have to respond, if you're focusing on the fence, the only chance you have to respond to a theft is if it's a copper theft, and by then you're actually catching them all on the way out the door. You're not ahead of the team. They've done all their damage. You're just catching them before you get out the door. You might recover some materials. So if you look at what I previously showed up for data and what you're looking here on the screen, there's an interesting inference you can make, which is that you're going to miss half the opportunities that happen to your facility. Just not going to get to them. They're going to be long gone before you ever see them. And what does that mean from a standpoint of cost? So again, these are real numbers, and the reason why they're so broad is that the sources I was using, mainly the CISB and FBI, they take into account not only the weekend warrior and the kids down the block kind of thing, but they also take in militaristic type action as well. So sniper attack between 1 million and 15 million. A drone payload drop between 100,000 and 2 million. Very wide ranges. The interesting thing I brought out was what a typical response cost was based on what the data showed. And so you're at down to 0.03% of the damage for a good response cost. Again, that doesn't even count the business disruption multiplier that I have there on the right. So if you just take copper theft as an example, pardon me, a good response being $500, when nothing goes right, they've made off with $90,000 or more. If you break in between, you might get that $30,000 back. but that's a significant amount of damage with an ROI of just doing it right, doing it well. That's 184 times return on investment or return on damage. So how do we move that data into our favor? How do we get to what good looks like? We have to extend our perimeter. By the time they hit the fence, it's too late. So a while back, we were asked to be involved in a projected study of a specific instance that was happening. Background, it was a 185-acre site, fence detection only. They had a guard on site, and that guard could be anywhere on site between 6 and 12 minutes, depending on what was in the yard and what was laid out and how easy they could get from point A to point B. They had 10 documented events in 6 months, 1 interception in 6 months, and they logged over $800,000 in damages in that 6 months. The obvious approach that the people were taking was, let's increase the patrols. We were involved in the study. First thing we did was exactly what they asked us to do, is not focus on anything outside the fence. They didn't care about the fence. They had stuff going on. They didn't want to be bothered with it. They only wanted to care about what was inside the fence. Now, I want to say this clearly for those people who have been working with Magos for a while. This is not a recommended way of doing this, but that's what the survey wanted us to do, so that's what we did. Doing that, the projected response time was between 3 and 7 minutes. A pretty good response, pretty good chop off the 6 to 12. The projected interceptions was 3 of 10, up from 1, and the projected damages dropped by half. Begging and pleading them, we asked them to let's redo another one. They conceded. We focused outside the fence. Still with that same singular guard, we were able to get the response down under a minute, 3 on the high side. Projected interception was 9 plus of 10. It was almost 10 out of 10. And the projected damages were around $100,000. Again, you can't stop if people break in, that's damage to the fence, damage to the gates, all kinds of things like that. So still doing very well. Putting those numbers together, the other thing that we found out was really interesting from the study was something we didn't think about, but that benefactors did, the attempt reduction. So how many attempts would be reduced that would say this place is too well guarded, we're not going to try. And by doing it with radar in and out, they're able to reduce the number of attempts by 85%. I'll let you chew on this for a little while. 3-year study. At the end of 3-year studies, they have done nothing but just kept their one guard. Their total risk exposure cost would be $5.52 million. Doing it with radar in the perimeter, keeping the same guard, the risk exposure cost was a little under $1.4 million. That's a 4 times return on the effort. How else can we move data in our favor? Speed, accuracy, and context. Notice the white line over here where we've already spotted somebody on radar, but we haven't caught him on camera yet. That's because he's in an area of interest, but not an area of alert. If you were to cross that line into our pre-alarm area, by the way, this was set up very well. Now it's an alarm or pre-alarm. We're going to check that guy out and see if he really belongs there. If he was to cross that second barrier and get on the internal, now we're going to have a response where we need to send someone out or need to do some sort of response, virtual or physical, to deter that action. And you can see right as they cross the line, we get a secondary event. Same thing here for a car. We got a pre-alarm area. Car enters pre-alarm area, starts being tracked. Virtual response, car leaves. Talk about speed and accuracy. We're worried about cars and people. We're not worried about cows. So we can actually filter out cows, filter out animals, we're still tracking them, but we're filtering them out so that they don't have to be an alarm if you don't want them to be. Key is, you might be in an area where animals cause a lot of danger and damage. You can alert on those. Here, the goal was to always understand a car leaving the parking lot. So now, no matter who gets close enough to us, in the area we don't want to know, or we don't want them to be, we always can see cars coming out of that parking lot. Another point is the machine to human handoff. We've got to speed that up. How do we speed off the machine to human handoff? We know that machines can do things faster than humans can. It's just the way it works. So we take that OODA loop that if you were in my first series, you saw that. Detection, classification, validation, response, review, and adjust. If you have a human be handed the ball right after detection, that's 0 seconds. It'll take them about 15 seconds to classify, about 75 seconds to get all the way through validation. So the response happens almost a minute and a half. It's actually a minute and a quarter after the actual event happens. Now remember, that window was 2.5 minutes. And that person's already done half the damage they're going to do in your facility. If you're not using that, if you're using a machine to human handoff right after detection, you've got to find a way to move that handoff farther down the line. One of the things you can do with sensor fusion is you can add number of sensors together to classify and verify and validate that you have an alarm. We were showing that just a second ago in Magos video. Now you have a 5-second window between the actual event happening and validation. So we go down to what good looks like on our timeline here. We actually can stop them before they enter the facility, because you can get your virtual response up. You can get your physical response, if it's on site, over to where the issues are happening. So I appreciate that was kind of dry. I hope everyone got some really interesting information out. I really enjoyed the fact that when I started seeing the data, it was fantastic. But what you should take away from this conversation today is that half of the attacks happen outside the fence. So if your time to respond is longer than the time to complete the action, you've got to find a way to extend your perimeter to look outside. And if you want to look them up, one of the key things that started this whole thing was looking at Moore County and Metcalfe, California, 2 cluster attacks and 2 long-range attacks that really did show what happens when nothing goes right. We're going to talk a little bit about Magos here, but I want you to take any questions you have, drop them in the Q&A, and we'll get answering those in a second. Magos obviously is here for you from the standpoint of being able to pinpoint your accuracy, speed, accuracy, and effectiveness, enhance your coverage, integrate your AI technology within the aspect of your detection solution. We focus a lot on critical infrastructure, but any facility that has a extended barrier works well with this solution. And we have applications in all of these and more. So I'll leave it with a call to action right before the questions happen, which is have us on site. We love to come and show you in your facility and your environment that we produce. So call us out. With that, I'll open it up to any questions. I saw some dings come in on my side, so I appreciate those people who want to be top of the list. Okay, where did I get my data from? I figured that would happen. So I showed you some of the sources before, but a lot of these sources happen through the FBI and CIMB. That's the Consortium of Insurance for Crime Bureau, something like that. I can get those to you if you DM me again. I'll get that to you. But that also came from DISA. It came from the DHS. It came from TSA. There was a lot of different data points that came around. There's a lot of different pieces that come around, but a lot of the main part of what the data what you saw today was from the FBI and the CIMB. Okay, the study was done. They will eventually put their studies out there and do it more officially than I did. It was a very detailed study. It was done for a facility that we are not supposed to talk about. It's a three-letter agency that was having people break in. A lot of it was just vandalism, but a lot of it was people like wanting to steal metal. And yes, Alan, I'll send you a list of the sources again in follow-up email. Oh, so drones. So drones have been relatively new as far as a TAC vector that people have been logging. We've known about them for a while, but we haven't been really logging those things as attacks. So the drone data only started about 9 to 10 months ago. They did log data earlier, but you could see a sharp increase in the data about 9 to 10 months ago, just right around the November timeframe, which again, we all know why that happened. Kelly, I will get you something, but we also will have uh, we have the recording that will happen and be published here in a little bit. Nicole, if you're on and you can open up, or you're on, I think that's about a week it takes us to get that thing done.
Yeah, yeah, we'll post it on YouTube and we'll send a link to anybody who participated.
Thank you.
Any other questions that you see here?
I didn't see any other questions come in. I got the ones off my my personal, which I appreciate that. If you want to get to the top of the list, I will always answer those first if you bother to text me directly. But if there's any other questions or not, Yaron said we'll have this thing in about a week. We'll post it on YouTube and LinkedIn. If you reach out to me directly, I'll try to put you at the top of the list to make sure you get one. You get a direct DM back of where it happens. If you like this one, you want to see more of this one, or whether you see more of the next one, or whatever you want to see for the next in our series, love to hear those feedback as well.